delegates, we would like to kindly ask that you have your seats. We are starting very soon, just not to waste time. We have 3 more minutes to start, but I would like that we get settled and we can start the section. If you're wondering what this section is all about, we would like to give you a very brief information about these sections. Really, what we are discussing right now is to look at the best way possible to support our SME agro dealers in terms of capacity development. And how can we do that to help them to support small-scale farmers, millions of them in Africa. And this section is brought to you under this our Abe Palabe tree of discussions, or how you want to call it, the breakthrough wisdom, where we ask you, the important stakeholders, to help us ask critical questions, make contributions, and not just listen. This is not a panel discussion. Forget about the chair. The most important thing is that we are going to be passing the marks around and ask you to make contributions, ask questions. The organizer tools will throw some questions to you, expecting answers to the best way possible on how we can build capacity. I mean, over the past 2-3 days, we've asked some important discussions about capacity development, whether for young people, whether for stakeholders in agriculture. And today, it's not going to be all about capacity, but how can we also provide incentive support to ensure that we facilitate improved productions for our farmers across Africa. So I see some people wondering what this section is all about. Again, we ask you to please kindly have your seats. 1 hour of great drive where we are going to take you through some of the important discussion. And by the way, if I may ask you, maybe just to start with, I would like to bring on stage just some very important discussion. Do you mind joining me on stage? Madam, I see you smiling at me. I love that. Please come on. Let's set the tune for today. You know, it's a beautiful day. Tanzania, AGRF, we love to hear from you. Also, you can tweet at us on Twitter using the hashtag. Good morning. How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you.
I like your beautiful smile. So I'd like to give you a mic very quickly. Tell me your name. Where are you from?
My name is Silahleke Lwembofana. I'm from Zimbabwe.
From Zimbabwe?
Yes.
Oh, the home of the that beat, yeah, you know.
Yeah.
Ah, okay. So what excites you about these sections? Why are you here? I'd like to learn. I know we're talking about the agro dealer, the SMEs. We're talking about capacity development. We're also talking about small-scale farmers in Africa. What excites you to come to this section?
To come to this particular section?
Yes.
Actually, I came to speak.
Okay.
Yesterday, I was doing a CEO chat on SMEs and financing.
Excellent.
So I'm just coming to learn from other people. I've learned a lot from being here. And I've met a lot of SMEs, women, men, youth. So
Yes.
I'm just here to learn. The other day I was here and I learned about innovation.
Yes.
From, I think, it was AG, what was it? Melinda
Yes.
Gates
Melinda
Foundation.
Gates.
So I've learned a lot. So
Yes.
lots of collaboration, lots of new things learned.
Yes.
And I'm also here to teach people. So our organization grows trees using agricultural waste.
Yes.
And then we use agricultural waste to grow mushrooms. So that's what we're trying to share information with the rest of Africa so that we clean up our environment. So instead of burning your agricultural waste, you use it to grow oyster mushroom.
Oh, excellent. Thank you so much. And I'm very important. Please have your seats. I'm very happy because we got the right audience here today. So ladies and gentlemen, please, if you are wondering what this section is all about, it's been organized by the CNFA, Cultivating New Frontiers in Agriculture with Scope Insight. And today, I will hand over the mic for them to facilitate this important discussion. Remember, what we are doing today is not to have the panel discussions like the usual settings normally for this conference, but today what we are actually doing is to have you make discussions, make contributions into this important topic. So please make welcome the team from the CNFA.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. My name is Sylvain Roy, and I'm the president and CEO of CNFA, and I'm based in Washington, D.C., and I'm very pleased to be here today You asked me, Dan, to deliver a speech that should not exceed 1 hour. Oh, no, sorry, he said no more than 1 minute. You are correct. Today we will discuss something very important that is related to access to improve inputs through a mechanism that is called Farm Service Center, and it's basically a one-stop shop for farmers to get access of a large range of agricultural inputs from seed, fertilizer, crop protection products, also smart equipment, and also extension services and output marketing. Very important concept that was developed 20 years ago in Eastern Europe, and we adapted this model to Africa, and now we have ongoing farm service center networks in 6 African countries. But today we will especially discuss the case of Rwanda and the progress made with the establishment of a network of farm service center. So that being said, as we just said, this is an interactive session, informal session, and we will ask you to ask questions. Please don't be shy, and it's a good opportunity to have like an intimate discussion about this very important topic. That's all for now, and I would like to invite our team to join me here and to start the presentation.
Thank you, Sylvain. Appreciate your introduction. And as our host, AGRF, and others have reminded us, this is an interactive session where audience participation is not only desired, but required. Audience must participate. And with that, I'd like to ask my colleague, the session I'm supposed to start with is, well, we did this work with agro-dealers, it was in Rwanda, but what was it about? It was about the implementation of the USAID Feed the Future Hingaweze activity, which went for 5 years from 2017 to 2022, and had the outcome of increasing incomes and activity for 735,000 Rwandan farmers. And we reached those farmers through agro-dealers. But rather than having me talk about Hingaweze, I would like to ask my colleague Patrice to say just a few words to us about Hingaweze. He remembers it from the side of USAID. He was behind us. Patrice, remind us, what was Hingaweze about?
Good morning, everyone. Hingaweze was a Feed the Future activity in Rwanda that has a focus on agriculture productivity, nutrition, access to markets, but also for inputs and then for output. So it worked with the smallholder farmers, about 500,000 of them. So with the services, including technical assistance, including access to seeds, fertilizers, but also providing some business development services for SMEs and some outgrowers working with smallholder farmers. So it was really good, but also it contributed a lot to improving nutrition for households in the country. Thanks.
Thank you, Patrice, for the excellent reminder. I appreciate. I'm just going to say one more word about Hingaweze. The approach Hingaweze used to reach 735,000 farmers was through agro-dealers, through a collection of about 300 agro-dealers that were involved in distributing, of course, at the retail level, inputs such as fertilizer, seed to Rwandan farmers. Our job to reach those 735,000 farmers was significantly easier because we were able to reach them through many hundreds of Rwandan agro-dealers. And so we said, well, let us build the capacity of agro-dealers to reach these farmers so that we don't have to. It goes back to the Farm Service Center model of CNFA that my colleague Sylvain mentioned. And we have this Farm Service Center model and also Hub Agro-Dealer model to reach farmers. But But it wasn't enough to do that for 5 years. We did it, and we achieved targets, and USAID, Rwandan government, we collaborated with well. But later, we realized, well, let us measure the effectiveness and the impact of that work with agro-dealers. It's not enough for us to say, we succeeded, let's go home. Instead, 2 years later, we did an academic case study to measure the impact and the effectiveness of that BDS program, Business Development Services Support to Agro-Dealers. We measured the impact of that program using a random survey methodology, interviewing 10 agro-dealers who benefited from the program, and implementing and interviewing 10 agro-dealers who did not benefit from the program. What was the difference between those two groups? And with this, I'd like to ask my colleague Jean de Dieu to come up and talk a little bit about the methodology we used, both for the provision of the capacity building to the agro-dealers and also to the case that we used for the academic research. Don't forget to call on the audience for support.
Okay, thank you, Dan, for introducing me. In Rwanda, under Hingaweze, we're working with the agro-dealers. As he said, we worked with more than 300 agro-dealers. So we are supporting them in a different way, just providing capacity building, just linking them with the farmers. But before linking them with the farmers, we realized that most of the agro-dealers didn't have enough skills to provide the quality inputs. So we started with training them how they can provide the quality input, because when working with the farmers and you are not provide the right inputs, it means that the production will not increase. So we train them, then we link them with the supplier so that they can be able to provide the good quality of inputs. Another issue we had with the agro-dealers, it was that most of them were just limited for one, maybe support, just providing like fertilizers. But we said you cannot make any business if you are just selling fertilizers. You have to add more product. So link them with the seed companies. So decide to supply the seed companies. But also, because there is an issue of accessing finance, we said it's better if you can be into cooperatives, so that when you join the cooperatives, join the forces, so you can increase your capacity, but also can be able to access the finance. So our agro-dealers were also able to access the finance. After that, providing a few supports, we said it will be better if we can access the progress if they are performing well. That's where we joined with the SCOMPI side. We did the assessment. For the first time, we did the assessment about the 35 agro-dealers, because the assessment was just measuring the emissions. And we found that our agro-dealers, even if we have provided some support, but there is still a gap in the internal management and also financial management. So after the assessment, we said that even if we assess the first two agro-dealers, it will be better if, again, you can participate all agro-dealers. So we capacitate all agro-dealers. Then after capacitating them, we see that they start also engaging more farmers in providing the right inputs. And then at the end of the project, we said it will be better if you can see how our agro-dealers are performing compared with the other agro-dealers. That's where that case study came in. So we selected 10 agro-dealers who got the support from the project. We also selected other 10 agro-dealers who then did the support from the project. So we did the assessment, and I think Marisa will talk about it a bit. But surprisingly, I think one of our agro-dealers, because the score was about 5, and one of them, I think maybe he must be the best in Africa. He scored 4.5. That was a lot. So because in that one, he came from agro-dealer and became a farmer service center. So it was a success, and I think it's one of our district called Nyamagabe, and the job they are doing now is impressive because they are connected with most of the farmers, even from the other side of Nyamasheke, they are just ordering the fertilizer, in-seed, and other support from that farmer service center. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean de Dieu. And before I introduce the next colleague from this panel, I'd like to ask a member of the audience to say a few words about their impressions so far about the work done with agro-dealers and the case study that you have before you. I'd like to ask, I think, from Mercy Corps, the colleague here, please.
Yeah, I'll just pass around the mic. You can hold your mic for the speaker, and then we use that. Another one. Yeah.
I don't actually work for Mercy Corps. I just have a notebook.
Ah, okay. We are promoting you to work for Mercy Corps there.
Yeah, my name is Will. I work with IDH over there. My takeaway so far, it sounds really interesting. Some of our work looks like it would really relate to the work that you've done. For example, some research that we just published found that working with smaller local enterprises could be much more effective than working with really large global multinationals in terms of building trust with farmers, scaling efficiently, etc. But we've also found that there might be trade-offs in terms of quality, because if you're working with a network of agro-dealers, you're indirectly managing the last mile. You're not directly engaging with farmers, you're relying on the quality of those SMEs. So I'm really curious to hear some of your insights about that. That's not a question, that's more, I'm hoping to get that out of the session.
Thank you.
Yep.
Do anybody have a follow-up questions to that? Because we've really had a nice insight from Rwanda.
Thank you. My name is Sarah. I'm at the World Food Program. Thank you very much for this really exciting example. And building on the comments from the colleague of IDH, I'd be really interested to know a bit more about how you targeted agro-dealers, like what was your selection criteria for who you work with, who you didn't, and how many, if any, were women?
Yeah, over to you.
The pressure is on now. We've got some very good feedback. There's Omar, our organizer. Do you want to pass to him?
Yes.
Sorry, one more question.
Omar, I would like to take your question, please.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm Omar, I'm from the program team at AGRF. So it's really nice that you have provided metrics, but I think for building metrics, you really need to establish a clear and structured and reliable baseline. So for when you establish the baseline, how did that go? And how did you make sure that the baseline was reliable to make sure that the metrics you're providing are also reliable? Thank you.
Omar, that's an excellent point. I have a few questions to answer, maybe another one coming up. Let me hit them before you get to him. Otherwise, I will forget, but we're coming to you. First, indeed, very good point. The last mile there is contingent, the success of that last mile approach is contingent on the capacity of those agro-dealers. Talking about selection criteria, we worked with the ones that we had assessed in the initial stages. They have registration, they have existing business, they have a formalized distribution of agro-inputs. So this was already maybe the top 50 or 60% of agro-dealers in Rwanda. These are the selection criteria we looked at to make sure the quality of the delivery to the farmers was acceptable, in line with Rwandan standards. And then those were the agro-dealers we worked with to build the capacity. And many of them had a long way to go, some longer than others. But it's a good point. It wasn't so easy with many hundreds of agro-dealers to segment them into groups that certain types of technical assistance would be required. But that's what Hingaweze did in the first year or so of our activity, measuring the baseline, which my colleague will talk about, Marise from Scope Insight. And so thank you for that observation. You said it wasn't a question, but I wanted to answer it anyway. To my colleague Sarah, thank you for your question. In Rwanda, you have close to 2,000 agro-dealers, of whom we worked overall with about 800, but through our district-based approach, we worked in the districts where my colleagues from USAID had done an analysis with the Rwandan government to measure the levels of stunting and malnutrition. And where those where instances of stunting and malnutrition are highest is where Feed the Future and USAID choose to focus their activities in what they call a zone of influence. And at that time, for Hingaweze, we had 10 districts of the 30 districts of Rwanda which covered about a third of the country, but mainly the west and the east. And so when we began Hingaweze, we conducted a baseline of the agro-dealers, surveying their current capacity, training, management, professionalism, which my colleague Marisa will talk about. We did talk about, I should say, there were women agro-dealers, and we had a special program to create more of them and to help the ones that did exist to form cooperatives so that they could better be able to meet in a common front against competitive pressures, bulk inputs to save money on purchases of fertilizer from our Moroccan friends and others. And we had, I think, good success with the female agri-dealers. Maybe I'll ask Jean de Dieu, is there something to add to the colleague, to Sarah's question about women?
Yeah, maybe something I can add. You know that our program, we have the nutrition program. And for business side, we wanted our agro-dealers to increase income. And you know, when we are talking about nutrition, just you know that women are more focused because we want them to sell the nutritious food. So just increasing their business, they're just selling the agro input, but they had also other shops where they can buy nutritious food. And we have realized that most of the women were just selling the nutritious food, not for the men, but for women. So that's why our program, we had the nutrition program, so we want to support more women so that they can sell nutritious food. Thank you.
Yeah, let me, we had a question here on this. Yes. Anas, we're getting you right after
we
this.
We will take this question and then I'll come back to you.
All right, thank you. My name is Oxford Osebonsu from Ghana. I work with a youth agency, but I was the project director for youth in agriculture. I'm interested in why you decided to establish the agro-dealer training program, and what was the impact on production? What was the success story?
Thank you for that excellent question. The purpose of the agro-dealer approach for us is because this last mile approach is the best way to reach large number of farmers. Even the Hingaweze program, supported by USAID, had only 140, 150 employees, people who were the tip of the spear. But with agro-dealers, we suddenly had 2,000, each one of whom were capable of reaching up to 10 or 15,000 farmers. So it was able to multiply our impact in the context of improved distribution methodologies of inputs, qualified inputs, or high quality inputs, I should say, seeds certainly, fertilizer, pesticides, and so this made our lives easier. We were able to achieve scale more quickly, and we realized the agro-dealers themselves had certain gaps that we could work with them to fill so they can access more money, access loans, access knowledge, information, so that they'd be better able to serve their farmers. And what you'll hear in the case, when we compare the 10 agro-dealers who were selected through a random survey with the 10 agro-dealers who were selected through a random survey, the two groups, one receiving our capacity building and one not receiving, we find that the average number of services provided by non-supported agro-dealers was only 39 services, veterinary medicine, inputs, advice, demo plots, etc. But for the ones that we supported with new services, training, capacity building, they were offering 69. So almost twice as many services were offered to farmers, meaning many hundreds of thousands of farmers received, in a sense, additional support from their local community-based agro-dealer. That was the result of the capacity building that USAID and Hingaweze implemented together. So thank you for the good question. And I move now to my colleague, from
you
OCP.
have a question?
Thank you so much, Daniel. My name is Anas. I'm the managing director of Rwanda Fertilizer Company, which is basically a subsidiary of OCP Group. It's quite amazing what you have done today, until today, Daniel, during this Hingaweze program. Your impact on agro dealers in Rwanda, it's like just amazing. My question mainly is how today you keep tracking the movement made with agro dealers and to monitor the results, because by the end is to have like independent kind of entrepreneur that also can run their businesses by own self without any other extra supports, if you can say. So it is very important to have kind of actions, monitoring a tracking of the results of those agro dealers to see really the impact of such program.
Thank you so much for that question, Anas, because it gives me the opportunity to introduce OCP more formally, which I'm going to get to in a minute. The question was about how to measure the performance and track what's happening with the agro-dealers over time. So what has happened is Hingaweze was a USAID-funded Feed the Future activity of 5 years that ended in June of 2022, and it was followed, after a few months of a gap, by a new USAID-funded Feed the Future project called Hingawunguke, which continues the momentum of Hingaweze. And now I get to the question of my colleague from OCP, because what we learned during Hingaweze, and some of which is presented in this case, we see, okay, capacity building was delivered, we presented information to agro-dealers, but we realized that the heavy touch approach of Hingaweze is maybe not the most appropriate one in the context of the market system. We now want to work with private sector actors and larger dealers, larger actors to build the capacity of agro-dealers, to support them so that they can reach even more farmers, even if this CNFA Hingawunguke is not around. And so with OCP, as Anas well knows, we have a partnership that we signed together at the end of June, which will enable co-investments of financing, capacity, and training into a network of agro-dealers that will be supported through joint efforts of OCP and the Hingawunguke project, so that farmers are better supported, agro-dealers are better capacitated. OCP is a very important player in the Rwandan fertilizer market. And to get to his question, to Anas's question about the capacity, so now we start Hingawunguke. We conduct a baseline, as we did with Hingaweze. We interview many hundreds of agro-dealers, and we use a tool to measure their capacity, which is produced by Scope Insight. And with that, I'd like to introduce my colleague, Marise, from Scope Insight, who will explain about the tool, the baseline methodology, the initial assessments, and then we continue from there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dan. For those of you who do not know Scope Insight, we are a company, a social enterprise based in the Netherlands, and we have developed different tools to measure the level of professionalism of different types of agribusinesses. And we have been working with CNFA for many years, and together with CNFA we have co-developed the input retailer tool, Scope Input Retailer, and CNFA, together with IFC, developed a curriculum that is based on that. So that is also available for others who would like to use that tool. The Scope tools, as I mentioned, measure the level of professionalism in different areas. And indeed, in the Hingaweze program, that was used as a baseline. What I find really interesting with the case study that was done now, that it wasn't only an end line that was measured, because the measurement of BDS, I've heard that in many other sessions in this, and I see Mark from AMEA there, and AMEA also supported this case study, is that how to measure BDS is crucial, because if you don't measure, you can't improve on what you're doing. And this is where I think this program stands out, because not only did we measure baseline and end line, but we also measured a control group. So how much more can you do, I think? This is really I think, best practice example on how it should be done. So our tools measure the level of professionalism in different dimensions, and we score them from 1 to 5. Our tools are standardized, and they can be used across the globe. So our tools have been used over 6,500 times in 48 countries. So we have a lot of data, and the data is then used in different ways. CNFA uses it to focus the capacity building. So what are the needs of these agro-dealers? It can also be used for M&E purposes. It can be used to connect these agro-dealers to finance. So the data element, a data-driven way of working, is crucial to take it to the next level. And also this data, the agro dealers can build a track record, right? So they build a track record that they become bigger, better, and they can show that also using the scope scores. And now to go back to this case study, what was really interesting to see is that the scope scores also showed that the BDS provided by this program led to significantly higher scores compared to the control group. So I think that was an interesting finding, and I think, yeah, I encourage other programs to follow the good example of this Hinga Owezi program. Thank you.
Thank you. Do anybody have a follow-up question? I see your hand up, and I see you as well.
Yes, hello. My name is Caroline Gommans from IDH. I had a question. Rwanda is quite a specific country, which enabling environment is maybe slightly different than some other countries. So I was wondering that you were referring to some collaboration with the Rwandese government. How important has that enabling environment been? And yeah, what are some of the conditions for replication in other countries?
Yeah, thank you, Caroline. That is a good question. Indeed, Rwanda has very strong enabling environment and very capable government that is able to oversee its the framework for the provision of goods and services related to agriculture. But I don't think it's an isolated case. When you have agro-dealers who are SMEs in almost all countries that CNFA has worked in, there is a regulatory environment that exists. You have to be certified, you have to have a certain level of service provision, and those who don't have that level of service provision can be capacitated so they can secure that certification, so they can work with local governments, registration bodies in other countries. I give an example. In Liberia, for example, there was no regulatory framework about 10 years ago for provision of agro inputs, but different donor-funded projects, including USAID Feed the Future, worked with CNFA to put in place that regulatory environment of inspections, of quality controls. So what we see in Africa, what we see with our Farm Service Center methodology is the regulatory framework is there. Sometimes it works better in some places than others, but for us, the local government was there as a mechanism of quality control, but not necessarily as a level of service provision. We only had them, in a sense, backstopping efforts and reviewing quality and doing checks through local government, but we provided the services. And those BDS services, now I'll switch soon to my colleague Jean de Dieu to describe a little bit more what those services were and how they interacted with local government, but hopefully I answered your question, Caroline. Thank you.
Thank you. I have to take you, and then I come back to you.
Good morning. My name is Jama. And anyway, you mentioned about private sector. So I come from Kenya, and I just wanted to know more about that. And also, Feed the Future, this USA. Most of the funds go to the northern Kenya. And most of it goes on the wrong hand anyway. With a lot of money. So I'm in the industry, I'm in the dairy industry, and there's no much impact. And the number of, the money that is going through the hands is too much. Yeah. So being an American taxpayer, so
I think you've made a very important question, very important comment, and there were two. One is about the involvement of the private sector, and I think the answer to that question also answers your second question, because indeed there is an industry of implementing partners such as myself, CNFA, who've been in the field maybe even 30, 40 years. CNFA has been around since 1985, and you see projects that are successfully designed and implemented, others that perhaps are not. But what we have seen now in this industry is more and more a transition, a kind of mindset shift to supporting private sector more. And this in particular is CNFA's main focus, to cultivate entrepreneurship, to work with private sector only. And this is about our agro-dealer approach. Those are private sector actors. We're not distributing fertilizer ourselves. We're not distributing financing ourselves. We're working with private sector to support them. And I think you might see many efforts throughout Africa that don't have that focus. But USAID, more and more, is moving to support private sector. CNFA has been there since 1985 to cultivate entrepreneurship. And in that way, I think resources are more effectively distributed and they have more impact. I agree with you. CNFA has been involved in agro-inputs in Kenya, although not recently. But our understanding, my understanding of the market there, having been in Nairobi, is that very vibrant, very competitive agro-input dealer environment in Kenya, which you're a part of, which is excellent. But the projects behind to support the growth and the development of that private sector, yeah, I'm not sure where it is. Maybe you could say a little bit. You hinted that. Off the record.
All
Yeah.
right. We will take that back the stage.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I allow you to ask your question. This is going to be very important. I think you're the first young person I'm giving the mic to, aside from Omar as well. So you should expect an
Nadine.
interesting question.
All right, my name is Nadine. I'm from USA Rwanda. Congratulations, Dan, on the success of this activity. You mentioned, of course, Hingaweze was only in 10 districts. My question is, given your partnership with the Rwandan government and that you're implementing Hingaweze now, is there a plan to advocate for the success of BDS in those 10 countries to the remaining parts of the country? Maybe the Hingaweze activity might not extend to the implementation of that, but are there some advocacy for the adoption of this in the remaining districts? Thank you.
Nadine, thank you so much, because you give me an opportunity to again highlight our partnership with OCP. OCP and CNFA announced back in June a series of co-investments into the agro-dealer retail network throughout Rwanda. The intent of the partnership is that with OCP we invest together in the creation of very strong, very capable agro-dealers in our districts, the zone of influence, while OCP, which is operating nationally, of course, and is targeting the entire Rwandan agriculture community, is investing in the areas where we are not present as part of the zone of influence. But Hingawunguke will end one day, and I know that makes all of us sad, but OCP will be there forever. And that methodology and the capacity building for the agro-dealers was provided already, at least in the fertilizer area, by OCP. And so it's a very good question. It gets back to my point for our Kenyan colleague, the point I made. We want to work with private sector. OCP's private sector actor supporting Rwandan agro-dealers and, of course, Rwandan farmers through provision of fertilizer. But agro-dealers are providing a huge number of services, some of which farmers really rely on. And so developing that network as this tip of the spear for the Rwandan farmers, to us, a huge part of the achievement of our productivity goals. And so you asked a bit about I might even say, enabling environment. Another intervention that Hingawunguke will engage in as it starts the new fiscal year is the creation of an association of agro-dealers and farm service centers that will be more capable of delivering services to Rwandan farmers, accessing finance, being able to to continue those type of activities long after Hingawunguke is gone. So yeah, short question. I gave you a long answer, but I appreciate.
Yeah, thank you. Before that, what does it take to go? Because most of our questions has been coming from the Eastern African community. What does it take to go to the home of the Amapihano in the Southern Africa? So I asked this lady to ask you a question so that you know the context from the Southern African as well.
Thank you. My name is Silambo Fana. I'm from Zimbabwe. So my question is, what criteria did you use to do the program in Rwanda? I'm from Southern Africa, so I keep hearing about East and West Africa, but not the South. And then my other question is that, I think it's for the gentleman from Rwanda. What does Hingaweze mean? And I know you said there's Hingaweze and then there's a change, site, I wanted to find out what the success of the tool they used to measure, sorry, I'm pushing down, it's disappeared. So to measure professionalism, what was the scale and what was the outcome of using that tool? Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. That's quite loaded. Do you
Yeah,
remember how?
I'm ready. No, I'm ready. Thank you for those good questions. The first question was about whether we can be present or deliver these services in South Africa, Southern Africa, Zimbabwe, South Africa. And I can say certainly yes. We, as CNFA, we implement these services generally on behalf of the international donor community. We've done that for USAID, of course, USDA, GIZ, many development partners, and we always look for opportunities to partner with the private sector anywhere in Africa, to partner with the private sector to work with development partners, deliver those services. So it'd be great to have a conversation about that in more detail after this. CNFA is present in Zimbabwe. I'm not sure, would you like to say a word about our activity in Zimbabwe? I will catch up afterwards. This was opportunity for CNFA propaganda, but we'll take it later. Your second question, the next set of questions related to Scope Insight, I'll let my colleague Marisa answer those, but I'm missing a question after your first one.
What is Hinga?
Thank you, the definition of Hingaweze. May I ask my colleague Patrice to give good English translation?
Thanks, Dan. Hingaweze is a Kinyarwanda name meaning cultivate for better harvest.
Thank you, Patrice. And before you sit down, now we have Hinge Wunguke. Now Patrice, as the follow-on to Hingaweze, will tell us what Hinge Wunguke means.
Hinga Wunguke means cultivate for profit. Yeah, now we are shifting from productivity increase, then making money, just bringing more money into farmers' pocket.
Yeah, thank you, Patrice. I appreciate your support.
Just to say that there is this manual that explains more about this initiative as well. So I'll give you one so that you can get more information about it.
Yes, and that has our contact information on there too, Madame. It has our contact information so we can be in touch. I know we had a question from my colleague, Mark, but we didn't answer the final one about the tools and the measurement of the financial management and management capacity. I asked Marisa to take that one, please.
Yeah, thank you. The scope tools do measure operations, financial management, internal management, those things, and they indicate in a dimension level, but also sub-dimension level, so quite detailed, in a scoring from 1 to 5, how well the organization is doing. So with that information, the CNFA team starts working to see how they can address these weaknesses. So the scope tools are only used as a diagnostic, and the diagnostic provides the inputs and the business intelligence for partners like CNFA to then act on that together with the agro dealers, because I think it's very important that the agro dealers, the ones that have been assessed, are part of the decision on what they want to and need to be trained upon. So that's how it is used. And then by doing a reassessment, you can see how these scope scores increase because of the training that has been provided. And what I think is important to see is that with this case study that we've done, there was a big improvement between the baseline and the end line. But it was interesting because our tools are standardized. We can also benchmark, and we can benchmark against the country, the region, but also global. And the improvement that was made was not only much better than the control group, but it also, the whole program ended up higher than the benchmark for the global numbers that we have. So this was really a success story. So it's a way of measurement of what a program does. And I think one of the questions that was in front here is how can, because if other development programs use the same tools, then you can also compare different development programs. So how can we go into other areas in Rwanda? We work a lot with AGRA. There are plans to work with them on access to finance, because that's how the data can also be used. So we can build an ecosystem, and the way we work at Scope Insight is with local partners, because we operate from Europe, but we do everything virtually. So we depend on good local partners to implement and to use the data. And that is how we can build an infrastructure of people, businesses that can work with the scope scores and see, okay, because it's an indication of risk. It's an indication of where the weaknesses are in the value chain. So that's also how it can be used. And we have different tools. We also, apart from the input retailer, we also have a basic and a Scope Pro for agribusinesses. And we also have now, quite new, a Scope Sacco. So those are the tools we have. Back to Dan.
Yeah, thank you. We've got 4 questions. I see your hand, and I see your hand as well. So, Mark?
Hi, I'm Mark Blackett from EMEA. We're a network which CNFA and Scope Insight are part of. I just wanted to reflect on the point that USAID made about how do you move beyond project to countrywide, to system-wide. I think part of the answer in certain projects like this is the partnership with OCP, which you mentioned. But I think it would be great if all donors in all countries would ask that question. How do we move beyond projects and approaches that are applied only in one project to something that scales up in the whole country? And that applies to input retailer approaches, but it also applies to every approach that you're targeting a particular SME segment. Input retailers are just one of those segments, and that's what EMEA does. It's trying to find the best approaches, which obviously are highlighted here today, and promote those through things like a peer review toolbox. And Rwanda, we think, is an excellent place for that to happen. It's a good, fertile ground to do that. So that's why we're trying to pursue an EMEA local network to generate learning around the best approaches and scale them up, obviously through donor, government, and private sector support. So yeah, please keep that question going and find an answer in Rwanda. And yeah, we hope to be part of it.
Yeah, thank you. I'm here. We have a questions there. This is very exciting section. Thank you.
Hello, I'm so happy to be part of this session. My name is Sakina Usengimana. I have a company in Rwanda called AfriFood Limited. We do export of fresh food and vegetables, but also we sell on local market. But also I'm the chairperson of Rwanda Youth in Agribusiness Forum, LEA, which also was fortunate to work with the Hingawese, and also we look for the opportunity to work also with Hingaunguke. So I have 3 things I want to talk about. One is regarding the distribution channel, because sometimes you find there's Hingawese was more about the productivity, but sometimes you find there's challenges to reach the product in good quality on the market where there's challenges of logistic or production center. So is there anything that's to be working on that? And the second will be about the post-harvest losses. Also, sometimes there's no need even to go to the market. Some of the products are being destroyed or lose the quality still at the market. So what is the plan there? And last is about the internship, because you find most of the work or the labor in the agribusiness you find look not professional. So what is the way there to be able to attract more young people and women to work in agribusiness and they take it as a serious work? So in terms of internship, is there an opportunity there? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madame, for those excellent questions. And it's always a pleasure to be reacquainted with old friends. Of course, Aryav was an important partner of Hingaweze, and I'm glad to see you, and I hope we connect afterwards about Hingawunguke. I do want to answer your question about Hingawunguke. Hingawunguke is a new initiative, in a sense, a continuation of Hingaweze, but with a focus more on the development of market-oriented partnerships, market systems, and private sector. So just as you said, Madame, it was before productivity, but now it is profitability. which is why we're called Hingawunguke now and not Hingaweze. And the distribution channel under Hingaweze was grants to beneficiaries who implemented projects that we jointly agreed. That's the old way. The new way, Hingawunguke, is co-investments in post-harvest infrastructure and farmer-level aggregation that allows us to achieve transformatory objectives related to the market system, particularly for maize, potato, beans, and horticulture. And so your background in the SME environment as exporter of some of these products is very interesting for us, of course, as well, as is your chairpersonship of ARIAF. And so distribution channel for us is close to $4 million co-investment fund where we'll jointly invest with private sector actors to achieve Rwandan and Feed the Future objectives around market system transformation. We have a few $1 million for subcontracts to engage local actors or even international ones like Scope Insight to develop with us the methodologies and the tools needed to ensure the success of that co-investment fund of $4 million. And then finally, I want to get to your question about internships. On my desk, waiting for me when I get back to Kigali, is the concept note for approval of our internship program. I've discussed with USAID, particularly our agreement officer representative. We'll engage 50 interns starting basically now with season A in the next fiscal year. And so we'll be talking to ARIAF about that for Hingawunguke, just as we did when we had Hingaweze together. So thank you for those excellent questions. Let me stop now.
Yeah, I have one more question for you here.
Yeah, so thank you so much. Zita, good morning. My name is Tony Fanganira, and I'm an agricultural economist. And I'm Rwandan, but I work for the Tony Blair Institute. We do provide advisory services to political leaders in about 30 countries. I'm based in Rwanda, but I happen to have worked in the agriculture sector before in Rwanda, and specifically in the Ministry of Agriculture. So I like this area or aspect of government, private sector, and donor, collaboration for sustainability. This is a great experience, great activity. But I want to focus more on the government side and specifically the local government side. There is a huge network of, district agronomists or sector agronomists. Also, to a certain extent, offering some of the services that these agro-dealers would provide. So the question I'm asking myself, and maybe you could have some insights based on what you've been doing, is what is the relationship, or the partnership between, let's say, this network of agro-dealers who hopefully are going to grow and touch on all the districts, and those local entity representatives who also are very close to the farmers and really are supposed to provide some of these services. Are we going to graduate some of these sector agronomists and hand over fully to the private sector? Is this partnership going to continue? I think this is really one question that we need to keep asking ourselves and really sustain these services to the farmers for productivity but also for profit. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Tony, you asked an excellent question, and I'm going to answer about half of it, but then I'm going to ask my colleague Jean de Dieu to answer the other half. First, you pose a question about the relationship of, let us say, Hingawunguke with sectoral and district-based agronomists, and maybe even indirectly or directly the agricultural extension system, Truguri Mihinzi. The answer to that question is that Rwanda, and I see my colleague Innocent Musabimana behind you, who was a key person in the development of the model used by Rwanda, Truguri Mihinzi, as you well know, and I'll ask him to speak in a minute. But to answer your question, for Hingawunguke, we see the private sector as the primary channel of the delivery of extension services. And this is the model. In the United States, in Europe, you have private sector actors like OCP, let us say, distributing or selling the knowledge about use of fertilizer. You have seed multipliers, seed distributors who are explaining and demonstrating the use of seeds. And different type of private sector actors, such as those ones I mentioned, are let us say the vision is they're the primary channel of extension information, but government is important because government provides oversight, government provides the enabling environment. Sectoral and district-based agronomists are there to support farmers who have issues or to address wider challenges like climate disasters, flooding, droughts, support the population. And let's be honest, those people are few. They are few. There are 2.2 million farming households in Rwanda, and you have some few hundred district and sectoral agronomists, and then another 14,000 Tugiri Muhinzi farmer promoters who are somehow capacitated by the government, but not enough to reach those farming households. I think we can agree. So we see the primary role of Hinge Wunguk is to use agri-dealers and other private sector actors, cultivating entrepreneurship, commercializing farmers as the primary channel. And for that reason, we co-sponsored with the European Union under Hingaweze the development of the CAIAS methodology, the Customized Agricultural Extension System, which was adopted by Cabinet and Minagri, and is now a mechanism that allows or even facilitates private sector involvement in extension. Before that model didn't quite exist, it was mainly Tugiri Muhinzi. Innocent, can I ask you to say a word about the question of Tony, your former colleague, and how the relationship between extension, district, and sectoral agronomists and private sector agro-dealers functions perhaps today in Rwanda? Do you mind saying a word, please?
Maybe before I go to that question, let me introduce myself. Innocent Musabimana. I'm the Chief Agriculture Technology Officer at African Development Bank and also the coordinator of the program called TAT, Technology for African Agriculture Transformation. So before I go to that one, I just want to make a comment. The way you presented here, it's really great. The way to go as we look for African agriculture transformation. Specifically, if you want to do transformation, the real issue is access to these inputs. And through agro-dealership, well-connected, equipped, skilled, that's the way to go. And this is a model we need to look as we go to the scale to the other part of the continent. And I was very pleased to, and I will follow up after, that strong evidence base that we have built. That will help us to partner with CNFA and look how we can scale within African investment program at the country level that these farmer service centers can help us to reach millions of farmers with these services. So coming back to that, I'm not sure I was the right person to ask that question, but after 5 years break, but I followed. The point here, you're right to say, if we want to do the last mile delivery of input at the last mile, the one winning factors, one is about agro-dealership. Second is proximity extension. So with that linkage, and that we have been building throughout, a farmer promoter at the village level being a knowledge source of basic knowledge to the farmer in the proximity, but also creating demand for this agro-dealership. So this relationship need to build and make happening to reach more millions of farmers. And this is happening with this extension system in Rwanda. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Innocent, for that. Jado, do you have anything to add? It was a good question about the enabling environment from Tony.
Maybe something I can add. We have some good cases. I was talking about the one farmer service center in Ijemagari. So that farmer service center, they started as agro dealers. But now, the way they are now, they have increased from just being an agro dealer to become a farmer service center. This is also now they are providing the extended services because they have a training room. And also they have the staff. They have the manager, they have agronomists, they have the accountant. So when people are coming to buy the fertilizer, the inputs, they just not buy the inputs only, also they provide how they're going to use the inputs. Again, they have some other shops in different areas where those farmers who are in the area, they can just have access to that input. but also after the input, they provide the technical support. And so they have the demonstration code. But more to that also, they added the aggregation. Now they're starting to aggregate. But also they have the access finance, because they're presenting some banks where farmers can access finance. So that as you can see, it's one of them, but I think it's the way forward for the agro-industry. Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Steve. I'm just going to put on a spotlight because we are actually very close to ending this program. We have like 5 minutes left. But before that, I'd like to ask my question so that we can close this section. And it's one interesting question that we all need to know. You've shared really interesting success stories from Rwanda, from Tanzania. What are your biggest challenges to implementing this program? Because you also talked about the fact that some programs you design, some are successful, some have some of challenges, right? So what are these challenges and how do you overcome them?
Well, that's an excellent question, and I need another hour of an additional session to talk about the challenges, the lessons learned, but I know that Omar will not give me that hour, and so let me try and do it in 2 minutes. One challenge we learned at Hingaweze and that we're facing every day at Hingawunguke is the issue of climate change, the uncertainty of the rains, the prevalence of drought, the shifting weather patterns. To meet the goals of our vision of making agro-dealers and private sector the tip of the spear for addressing these problems requires a mindset change, a lot of capacity building in climate-smart agriculture and different type of methodologies, irrigation, drip irrigation, terracing, about how farmers can be capacitated to be resilient, climate resilient. This for us is a huge challenge because before you had 2.2 million farming households trying hard to produce more, and now we must not only help them to produce more and sell more, but also to be more resilient and make sure that they don't lose their crop in mistimed fertilizer application or seed planting. So this for us in the capacity or in the context of agro-dealer capacity building is the most challenging. That's what I would say. So, and I have, yes, let my colleague come in, please.
I'll only take 1 minute. But I think for us at Scope Insight, it is to partner. Our challenge is to find more partners like CNFA who take the lead in using standardized tools. Because I think what the most important element is how do we go about getting rid of the fragmented way that we approach these things. So all these donor-driven programs have their own KPIs, they have their own way of measuring. So how can we align the way that we measure? How can we not compete on how we measure, but let's compete on how we implement? And I think that's one of the things. And then, you will see on the data who is the better implementer and who has the good partners on the ground. So I think can we standardize and how can we benchmark, because that also helps in benchmarking and it helps also in delivering and learning what works and what doesn't work so that we can take it to the next level instead of reinventing the wheel with every new program that we do.
Thank you so much. And to wrap up this section today, I would like to bring Roy on stage for one final opening remark. And yeah.
So we have shared our lessons, our data, and we made one mistake when we started the session is that we didn't take a baseline of your knowledge. Someone asked a question about that. But one last question to the audience is I would love to know and learn from you what you hope to take back to your country, to your company, on what you learned from that. And I think I was a teacher on another life, so I will gladly call on people. Any takers? You're looking at me very interested, so I'm going to pass the microphone to you.
So thank you so much. What I'm taking back, and which is a recommendation to the program, is perhaps to come up with, a farmer service delivery model using, for example, the Nyamagabe successful case to really kind of, build that model where it's clear who does what, and hopefully really be able to extend it to other districts. Because I keep coming back to the role of local government, and if it's about really the enabling environment, it has to be very clear what that is exactly. Because let's face it, sector agronomies, district agronomy, they also have their capacity gaps. Why don't they focus on what they can do best and leave the rest to those who can do that better? And then you build that delivery model that is really going to make a difference to the farmers. I think if that works in one district, it will be very replicable to other districts as well. So I'm happy really to continue this conversation with you so that maybe we take this forward. Thank you.
Okay, we're out of time, but I'll give you, if you can wrap it up in 1 minute or 30 seconds, that would be very great.
Thank you, everyone. My greetings, and my name is Alfred Buzaza. I'm a professor of agricultural economics from the University of Rwanda, but also a policy analyst. I want us to also reconsider the role of cooperatives. Because when you look at the national policy on cooperatives, there is this growth pathways where these cooperatives should be supported, capacitated, to turn them into small and medium enterprises. And I know, since Rwanda has been relying on them over time as part of the key actors in the sector, the reconsideration of the capacity building in the sense of translating them into small and medium business-oriented enterprises could be also a very big opportunity to consider and not to lose. Thank you again.
Thank you. If you have told me you're a professor of agricultural economics, I would have given you 5 minutes because I'm an agricultural economist as well. But yeah, I'll allow you to take
I just want to thank everyone for coming. Thank you to our USAID colleagues. Thank you to our wonderful Rwanda staff members. And thank you for AGRF for hosting us.
Thank you so much. Distinguished delegates, again, a very thank you to you for coming. We have this printout for you, documenting these case studies and success stories from it. Please, we ask that you all come on stage. We would like to take a group picture that goes on all social media platforms and used for some of our promotional materials. And for your information, Scope Insight is very active on Twitter. I follow some of their tweets, same as the CNFA. Please, can I kindly ask you to please come on stage? We want to pose for a picture, selfie. Okay. Thank you. What a very wonderful section. We learned a lot, and we will take this forward. Our next section is coming up in the afternoon for this Abe Palabe, where we will be discussing a lot with other different stakeholders. But to also keep you informed that at 12, we have the culinary sections with some of our chefs on Beans is Out. Yeah, thank you. This is too much. Let's gather together. Some seats here, we pose like this. Yeah, can we sit down? Some people can sit, and yeah, we make it fun and lively. Right? They said we should do cooperative for farmers. We need to cooperate, sit down. Yeah, I like that. Thank you. Can we have the professional cameraman, please, and somebody with the phone that want to take us? Yes. Professional photographer as well? Yes. Omar, you can also use your phone. Do we have any of the professional photographers as well? With their camera too. Can we squeeze together? It's too long. Yes. Please, come, boss. Have your seat. Have your seat. Let's sit down. Yeah. All right, everybody pose. Thank you so much, everyone. It was good to have this lovely section with you. Thank you.